The NFL stands for not for long.
Set, Sharga and Armstead. Roll out, Walker still running out. Looks to the left, wide open, Thompson touchdown. Colin Thompson with the touchdown. There was nobody within 20 yards of
What a catch off the bobble. Colin Thompson scoops it up.
Lofting corner, the end zone. It is caught for the touchdown. The first NFL touch for Colin Thompson is a score.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Colin Thompson Show, brought to you by Not For Long Media. I hope everybody is doing well. Had a great weekend. We're really excited for our next show to come out here with Adam Breneman. Adam is a really college football media mogul at this juncture, has his own media company. He's creating other companies. You know, there's a new thing at Penn State he's got going on. He's doing live podcasts. He's huge on TikTok. He's talking through X's and O's. He's talking through different players he likes this year in college football. If you're a college football fan and you're not following this guy, you're wrong. Just follow Adam Breneman. Fantastic. And you're going to see our conversation today. We were able to get into a few different things, football-wise, stories. Adam was the number one tight end in the country 2013. I was the number one tight end in the country in 2012. A very similar pass in that regard, both from Pennsylvania. So always been fans of each other. He's been on the show multiple times, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Before we do, we got to talk about our friends over at the original Fudge Kitchen. They ship fudge across the country and all of their sweet treats. So good, so fresh, so delicious. Their fudge made in-house every day. USPS goes to them, pulls it right out of the back door, right into a box, wrapped in that awesome kind of wax paper they put it in that keeps it fresh for like 2 weeks. Really remarkable stuff. So fudgekitchens.com if you want to send somebody some fudge this year. That's a little bit different than, your normal flowers or a birthday gift, a gift card. Send them, a taste of the Jersey Shore. I love the saltwater taffies. I love all the fudge flavors, honestly. Peanut butter is my favorite, of course, but who's counting? So, yeah, all's good in my world. Just an update there. Obviously, for those that are following myself and this show, I'm with the Minnesota Vikings, which has been an unbelievable, the first-class experience here, playing football professionally, socially. It's remarkable. It's been a great place for me to work. Would love to be here this year, obviously. And we have another preseason game coming up in joint practices with the Arizona Cardinals. Just came off a loss in a preseason game last week against the Tennessee Titans. We had joint practices against them as well. So fun times here. We're in the thick of camp. We're winding down. We're in our last week, which is a really crazy. Time has flown by. It's been a month since I've been here in Minnesota. Everyone has been first class. The city is awesome. The facility, the campus, it's really not just a facility, it's a campus, is spectacular. And like I said, it's been a first class experience here. So that's update for me. No bar of the week this week. Been good, obviously. Been training camp mode, so haven't been out and about. But everyone on Twitter's been great, sending me places to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all around town. Everyone knows I'm pretty big with that, and I got to get some Sam Boner reviews going too. But check out all our shows here, guys, at Not For Long Media. Geez, the Sam Boner Show, Breaking Bats, Trending Thoughts with Tori Smith, Showtime Speaks with Rasheed Bailey. Two Girls, One League is coming back here soon. So that's like 6-7 shows. Brought to Light is in the works as always. So 7-8 shows we have rocking here at Not For Long Media. Something for everyone. Check out our website, notforlongmedia.com. Thank you to our official sponsor, the original Fudge Kitchen, shipping fudge and sweet treats across the country, fudgekitchens.com. Going to a game this year, coming to a Vikings game this weekend. Pop that promo code Colin Thompson in at StubHub, COLINTHOMPSON. That's $20 off your tickets, $50 or more. Without further ado, Adam Breneman, it's college football season. The perfect guy to come on and talk about college football season. The first game, big game, Navy Notre Dame's happening. I'm sure there's one happening during the week, but this weekend, the big one, Navy Notre Dame overseas. I think being played in Ireland. Correct. Not really good podcasting by me. So without further ado, Adam Breneman, I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. All righty. Friend of the show, Adam Breneman is joining us. Adam, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man? Appreciate having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's a really busy time for you. coming up, I know, and I'm sure you're logging a bunch of hours. Adam is a rocket ship and really a mainstay now in the college football media landscape for sure. The football media landscape. You're working your ass off. You have your own media company, your own podcast. You're doing stuff with Big Ten. Talk about what you're up to lately and talk about what's coming this fall.
Yeah, got a lot going on, man. It's been good. I appreciate you saying that. Just, the content never stops. I know you're on the content grind too, just trying to blast it out there. And then, with football season coming up, just figuring out you only have so much time during football season, right? And there's only so many shows you can do. And I mean, for me, it's figuring out what makes the most sense and what games.
That's why I grabbed you now.
What's that?
That's why I grabbed you now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, too, I'm having a lot of really good conversations on like the broadcasting front right now. So figuring out what those, what that's going to look like in the fall and what games I'll be doing, and hopefully they'll be seeing me on some pretty cool games.
Yeah. Now, so you're going to be doing some color commentary stuff for the Big Ten or different networks, or can you speak about that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure which one yet. So this is honestly like this time right now is where all the deals get worked out. It's and for me as a guy who's not Kirk Herbstreit and Joel Klatt, but kind of breaking in, a lot of what happens to me is dictated by the bigger deals on the bigger networks. Where it trickles down to if there's movement at ESPN where they take a guy from CBS, everyone moves up at CBS and it opens a slot on the ACC package, whatever it is, what I mean? It all trickles down like that. So it's kind of wait and see right now. I was with ESPN last year and still talking to them and CBS and Big Ten and trying to figure out how it's all going to play out. Could be a kind of a compilation of a few different ones. Could be CBS, Big Ten, kind of doing games almost a la carte for each network, which is cool too.
That is fun, man. We were talking before, and I'm going to bring it back up, is the challenge of really following college football at a high level, knowing all these players, and now with NIL and player movement so frequent, it's so much different. Before it'd be like, here's your 20 transfers for the year. I transfer, you transfer, right? Like there's not a lot of us. There's like 2 or 3 per position group before. And for whatever reason, usually it was like really bad situation or like you just weren't playing. Now there's a million of them. It's hard to follow these guys. Whereas, the NFL Media Boot Camp, I was really fortunate to be at, this past, let's say wintertime out in LA, they were so big on player pronunciation. They were so big on, doing your homework because you will get exposed. Like, I'm not going to say names, but some broadcasters are getting exposed because they don't do a lot of prep and they just get up there and talk about a bunch of random shit. And it's not, the fans smarter now. But in the NFL, there's 32 teams. Shit, between the Big Ten and SEC alone, there's 32 teams. So, what's some of the struggles that you find calling games week to week and following all these players?
I think there's a lot of challenges that go into it. It's one of the biggest things, and one of the reasons I think that being an analyst in college is almost more difficult than the NFL, because as you said, in the NFL, you have 32 teams. Everyone that follows football knows who the 32 starting quarterbacks are in the NFL. You draft them in fantasy. You play with them. You play with them on Madden. You know who they are. In college football, there's so much movement, so much turnover all the time, and there's so many freaking teams. I mean, you got so many, and as an analyst, it's really cool because you got more to watch and to learn about and follow and to analyze. But you also get asked about a lot of things. I'm going to Big Ten Media Day next week, and like you better know every Big Ten team up and down when you're at Media Day. The same way that when you go call a MAC game, you better know the offensive coordinator for Tulane or for Central Michigan, and got to know what everything, his background, what kind of plays he calls, what his scheme is. It's there's a lot to learn, a lot to follow. It's a lot of fun, but you just got to be. I was telling you, Colin, before we got on, I'll say it again. I was just on a podcast the other day, and someone asked me a question that was like, I forget exactly what it was. It was like, who's your top 3 underrated offensive line units in the Big 12? And I'm like, I need some preparation to come up with that off the top of my head, because there's so many teams, so much to learn and follow. It makes it challenging, but also is part of what makes it really fun.
No doubt, man. And it's even funny. You mentioned, you said Tulane there, like a MAC team, Tulane.
I know, right? Yeah.
Your mind just.
I'm trying to keep it. What conference is Tulane in anymore?
They're in the American, baby, which used to be before Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF departed. to the Big 12, which I think is great ad for the Big 12. Obviously, you're never going to replace Oklahoma and Texas, but they're really good cities and good places to add. Good schools, other sports are good. I thought the American, why they're in it, again, I transferred into this American Athletic Conference, really wasn't the plan, as you know. To make the longest story short, I thought it was the best city conference in the country.
It is really cool. Yeah.
Between Annapolis and Philly and New Orleans and Memphis and Orlando and Tampa, boom, Connecticut. Like, I just thought it was really cool. Cincinnati, I said Houston, Dallas, like some great cities. Sometimes when you're in these big, small markets, you've seen it. The MAC, the Big Ten, you've called these games. Like, we used to play at Penn State. There's only one hotel for the away team to stay at. It's small. It's different travel for sure.
Yeah, no, there's so many cool college football cities. I think you mentioned UCF's one of my favorites. I mean, I've been there a couple times now, and I love that addition to the Big 12. I think they're going to struggle in year one, right? It's going to be tough. You got just different type of football, but you hear the term sleeping giant a lot in college football. I really believe UCF is a sleeping giant. They got the head coach now. Their quarterback, John Rice Plumlee's a really cool dude, plays baseball and football, but just the area they're in, Orlando. I mean, they're dying for a college football team there, and I think the challenges of that school, where it's a commuter school, they don't really have they don't have a lot of students on campus, but that community, I've been there a couple times, and I interviewed their quarterback, John Rice Plumlee. Like, they're building it the right way, and what I love too in college football is the schools and the coaches willing to do things that are non-traditional, and the branding part of it. Like, they're doing unique things. They put the QR codes on the back of the jersey at UCF. When you walk into the UCF football facility, the very first sign that it says, "The future of college football is here." And it just, like, you know, emphasizes what their mantra is, that, like, they want to be an innovator in everything in college football. And I'm excited to see kind of what they do in the Big 12. I'm excited they made the jump.
And unless you're Notre Dame or Penn State or Ohio State or Bama or Stanford, like, do that, right?
Exactly.
Like, just do it. And now, again, if you're Princeton, I understand it. It's way different. But UCF, dude, you go there, they have like the whole galaxy. I've called games like you have on the field there. They have the awesome suites in each corner of the end zone. Yeah, no, they're doing it right. And I always sat there as a Temple player, and I'm like, it's a shame where Temple's headed. And Coach Drayton will do a nice job there. But, you know, at that time when we were so good, it's like, man, we had the stadium done, and it kind of got boycotted through the city, and it never happened. And who knows if it will, because I don't know if Temple could physically get back to where we were. But I digress. I think they're a great add to the Big 12. You follow it more than I do. My initial gut was that of all the teams that are going to make the jump, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, I think UCF in the long run will be the best one out of the group because of the fact that they can recruit kids now and say, hey, listen, you're in the Big 12 now. You're not playing in the American. You're not going to UConn, which is not in it anymore, but you're not going to Philly or Annapolis or Cincinnati. We're going to Waco to beat Baylor. You know, we're going to Texas Tech. So you can recruit kids in Texas now plus Florida. So I think recruiting-wise, they'll do well.
What do you think is I'm interviewing you now. What do you think is one of the reasons that, like, Temple can't figure it out? Being in Philadelphia, like, is it because everyone comes here to recruit? It just seems like you got so much talent around here.
Coach Rule did it right, man. You know, it's not it doesn't take a brainiac to know that how Coach Rule did it.
Yeah.
Structure, discipline, taking lesser players and developing. And, you know, when Coach Rule was at Temple, they wouldn't offer you unless you came to camp.
Yeah.
You did not get an offer unless you showed up on that campus. Now, things have changed now, but even then that was a little archaic, right? So they would host a camp on summer holiday weekends to see what kids were serious about football. And listen, Rod Carey came, and I know this for a fact, and said no more of those. Well, how do you know who's serious about football? I think that's just everything was dialed. There was no stone left unturned. And to answer your question, how do you make it a Temple? It's tough, man. You know, you gotta hit it at the right time. We had the momentum. Coach found the right guys that were 1 stars, 2 stars, no stars, walk-ons, kind of misfits. I was hurt. Our best player, I think at the time, one of them was Nick Sharga. He was a fullback from West Virginia Wesleyan. I was looking to transfer. I think his brother transferred to Penn State. I could be wrong, Sharga. But I digress. Dude, I don't know the answer. First off, it's really tough recruiting because campus-wise, Delaware could be recruiting you right down the road. And it's a D1 AA, and it's a beautiful state school, and it's a great education. Temple's a great education, but you're in a really rough part of the city, right? There's shootings that happen on a weekly basis there. I don't know, man. It's tough. You played the Link. They paid a lot of money to play at the Link.
Yeah.
There's no stadium. I think how you do it, honestly, Adam, is you build a stadium. You put the cart before the horse, really, with the program. That's the only way I think the program can ever get back to where it was. And you have state playoff games there. You have youth football there, and you kind of get North Philly to buy into Temple a little bit more, and I think you'd be okay. But great talent, man. South Jersey, it's funny, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. You and I growing up, you had CB West, maybe a blip or two in Philly, and then boom, North Penn, and then you had across the state, right? Even Harrisburg had some great teams, Bishop McDevitt, but across the state, we all know, Aliquippa, Pittsburgh Central Catholic, Erie, right? The list goes on and on. I think it shifted back to Eastern PA, though. Really, since you and I, those years of like 2011, 12, 13, 14, and now it's off to the races. Like half the NFL and college football is from Eastern Pennsylvania and South Jersey.
Yeah, no, it really is. And even when I was at Arizona State, I mean, the amount of talent in that Philadelphia region, the eastern part of the state, even it dwarfs what was on the west side of the state for a long time. I mean, there were some really good players that came out of Pittsburgh regions, all that area, and South Jersey's got so many good players. And I think that's you mentioned the hard part of recruiting to Temple. The other hard part is that it's an area that everyone comes to recruit. I mean, you're not just competing with Penn State and the Delawares and the Pitts. Like you're competing with like USC, and you're competing with. And you compete like they'll come get anyone they want, and then you're also competing with South Florida, who comes to Philadelphia to recruit, and they like so it's not like you're some of these group of five schools who kind of have their territory, and they can kind of not place a lot of big programs or even similar programs to them are coming to recruit. Everyone comes to Philadelphia and South Jersey now. It's completely changed, and it's made it difficult. And I think too, back to kind of that conversation and the Temple one. You look at a school like USF, South Florida. They just announced they're building a stadium on campus for the first time. I feel like at Temple, it's something Coach Franklin talks about a lot. He says the commitment doesn't match the expectation. Like the commitment from the administration and the commitment from what they're willing to do doesn't match what they expect the program to be. They saw Matt Rule do it, and everyone thinks it's easy to do. It's not. Matt Rule's a once-in-a-generation kind of coach. If you want to win at the highest level at Temple, that's possible. You got to put the cart before the horse, as you said, and build a stadium. You can't wait for the results to come and then do it the other way around. And USF is a great example of administration showing commitment, buying in, and knowing that the results will come in the long term because of it. And there's top-down alignment there. It's a stark difference to what's at Temple right now.
It's a great point. And Temple should even more so than USF because – it's hard to get kids to come to North Philly. It's fact.
100%.
USF, palm trees, Tampa, great recruiting. I'm local. Yeah. I get to play all these teams in the state of Florida in college. I get to play all my buddies. Like, that's kind of why would I leave Florida? That's a tough.
I really took us off the rails here going into Temple football here.
I love it. This is why I do it. Like I always say, no prep for my show because I don't want to force anything. I think there'll be some questions I want to ask you that I think will be good for our listeners. But other than that, like, I don't know, man. I always say I try to be Joe Rogan minus the politics, the weed, the booze, and the 100 million. We're like,
it is funny, dude. When I do podcasts, I find that when I prepare less, they're always better pods. Like I feel like when I have a lot of preparation, and don't get me wrong, like you got to prepare a little bit. I always have the questions because you got to have a crutch to fall back on if the conversation stalls. Yeah. But when I go in and I have, okay, these are the 12 questions I want to ask James Franklin, it doesn't allow you to be a real human being and have a conversation where he may take it one way and you got to be able to like dive in a little bit deeper, like continue to like you just did right there. I brought up Temple and you dive into South Jersey. That wasn't a question you had written down, right? You just took it that way. Where like if I'm too structured, it almost feels like you're grilling them in an interview. They get personal about their family in an answer, and you're like, the next question's like, what do you think about NIL? That's not the way to handle it. So a lot of times the more I wing it, the better the interview ends up being.
No doubt, man. And it's funny. I work with a bunch of people, and I'm talking to a bunch of people, and I help suggestions and all these different things with shows and all this stuff. Just like people ask you the same stuff. Should I start a pod? I got invited to this. How do I do it? I'm like, no prep.
Yeah.
No prep, because you're always prepping. I follow you on Twitter. I see all your stuff.
Yeah,
Right, we follow each other on Twitter. Like, there's no if you're involved in your guests' lives. Now, again, if I'm interviewing some aerospace engineer and I have no idea, well, you know what I'm going to do for him, her. I'm going to say, "What are you up to in the world today?" We'll talk about, because people talk about what they want to talk about, right? And you brought up a great point about Temple. No one's dominated Temple football, but it's really it's dissecting college football as a whole at the end of the day. And I mean, if Coach Franklin says talking about his family, you don't want to be held down to that question. You want to keep peeling back that onion, you know.
Exactly.
How they were living in State College. Are they at Berkeley Creamery? All that stuff. Shout out to Berkeley Creamery, by the way. We used to hit that all the time. All right, so let's start a little college football here. Let's get it back on the rails. Man, there's so many things to ask you, because it's like, again, I don't want to be generic here, but are you taking Georgia this year, or are you taking the field?
I'm taking Georgia, man. I don't know. I don't know how you can't. Like, you look at who they return, you look at what Kirby Smart's done. I think you got to take Georgia. I was just looking at the odds that I think BetMGM just released their odds. I did a video on it the other day. It was just looking at some of the field and like who you got. I mean, some of the odds, like getting Georgia at plus, I think it was like plus 250 or something. I still think those are really good odds to take Georgia at. I don't think we'll get them at plus odds after week 1 of the regular season. I think they're too talented, and you know, I think they got a chance to do what's never been done before.
They got a great staff, man. I know Fran Brown, the defensive backs coach there. He's, I think, one of the best DB coaches in the country. I was with him at Temple. He's bounced around. He was tied at the hip with Coach Rule for a while. Went to Georgia. Will Muschamp's defensive coordinator. He's coached a lot of football in a lot of different places. He recruited me to Florida. You know, obviously their OC got plucked out, went to the Ravens last year.
Yeah.
I love their tight end, man. What's his name?
Brock Bowers.
I mean,
he's the best player in college football. Brock Bowers is the best player in college football. Like, it's not even close.
Why?
I mean, he's by far the most talented at his position in college football. I mean, it's not. I don't even think it's like relatively close to any other. I think, and I also don't think I'm like the first one to say that. He's going to be tight end 1 without a doubt. He is elite at every part of the game. He'll be like, he's as good of a tight end to be a franchise changer in the NFL. Like, that's how good he is of a player. And I've watched a lot of his stuff. You talk about a guy who just literally every part of his game is elite. Like, there's not a part. He's physical. He can block. He's got unreal body control. Great hands. He can run. He's flexible. I mean, there's everything you can possibly want in a tight end. He's as good as I've seen at the tight end position.
I'm trying to think of who he reminds me of in the NFL. So he's 6'4", 230. He's 230. So he'll probably combine next year. He'll have him at 240. He'll play.
He gets a lot of Kittle comparisons, but I think he's more fluid than Kittle, if that makes sense. I think
Kittle's like bouncy and boundy and stringy. Yeah.
Yeah, and not that Kittle's not a good athlete, but he's just a little more. He's a little more. He's dynamic and athletic. Normally, as you know, like, we can talk about tight end play all day. You have the box they put him in, right? Like, you're either that freak athlete who runs the 4.4, the 4.5, but like, you're not playing a line of scrimmage, or you're the guy like you're the guy who's a blocker who isn't going to go run 15-yard corner routes, but like is gonna, you know what I mean? Like, you're more of the physical guy.
You play in the offense.
He does, yeah. He can do it all. He's an every down tight end. Can play all over the field. He's
more of like a Mark Andrews. Mark runs really well.
I think that's a good. The problem is, it's funny because I've been asked to compare him before. It's almost hard to compare him because, like, I really think he's like better than all those guys. Like, I think he's going to be that good. Like, he's a little bit more physical and better in line of scrimmage than Mark Andrews is. He's a little more athletic than George Kittle. Mike Gesicki, like, he's that athletic, but like way better in line of scrimmage and can be physical. You know, it's like, you think of all these guys, and he's a generational talent. There's no doubt about it. And I hope he pans out in the NFL, or you're going to use this clip in 5 years and just absolutely blast me on the.
It'll be good. Your followers will grow and mine will grow, because the more bold shit you say and the more ridiculous stuff you say, that's how it goes. That's the world we live in today.
I'll say the college football team. You asked me about Georgia, like, who will three-peat. I think really the one team that I like a lot, and I'm curious to hear your take on it, is LSU. I really like what they've done. At the end of the day, man, if you got an elite quarterback, you got a chance. Like, you got a chance to be really, really good if you got an elite quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be top 3, top 4 quarterbacks drafted. He's got a great arm. I was with him at Arizona State. I saw him firsthand. His growth has been remarkable. I think the job that Brian Kelly and Mike Denbrock, their offensive coordinator, did with him, allowing him to really play within the system and do what he's good at and move that offense. The problem with him at Arizona State, Jaden Daniels, was that they were asking him to do things he's not good at. He was having to stand in the pocket, read through his progressions. You see the shots he takes down the field are one read, are touchdown, check down. They're one read. You're taking the shot or you're checking down to your back. He's not standing in the pocket and progressing and doing that. Or they're RPOs, or it's quick game. It's it's a yes. We call them yes/no throws. It's where the quarterback looks at the guy and it's either yes or no. You're not making 4 decisions. Am I throwing it? Yes. If no, here's what I'm doing. They've done that with him, and he's been. I think that offense is really, really good, and I like LSU, the roster they bring back, and I think they got a chance to make the playoff.
Lots to unpack there with LSU. First off, some of my favorite players I play with in the NFL are all LSU guys. Okay, yeah. They're all unique. They're all freak athletes, tough, great stories from LSU. Okay, yeah. Unbelievable stories. Way different than a Penn State or a Florida story. Yeah. They're just nutty. Baton Rouge is a great place, and that stadium is incredible. So there's that bucket. What Brian Kelly has done in 1 year, from my father-in-law's a diehard LSU, played at LSU, played golf at LSU, was an All-American there. So, all my wife's family's all LSU, so in Alabama. So I follow the SEC a lot, obviously with Florida too. And to hear them be so concerned before the season to saying, oh my God, look what that is so impressive to do. It's not like you're a coach who just took over a team in the American and you got hot and no, you're rolling with the big boys. Yeah. So that was impressive. Then the third block that I would unpack is, and I unpacked this earlier on another show, was someone's like, what offense you run? You got the playbook. You're the OC. What do you run? I'm like, well, who are your players? Yeah. No. It's my buddy, Keenan Bailey, tight end coach at Ohio State. Yeah. I had Keenan on, and he's like, hey, what are you calling? I said, Keenan, who are your tight ends? Who's your fullback? Do you have one on the roster? Are they any good? Okay, are we running power? Are we running outside zone? Or are we going to spread teams out and run our –
we have athletic tackles? That all –
Who is it? Is the guy 270 playing tackle because he kick slides every play and they have him 290, but he's really 270? Or is he a road grader? Who's your guard? Is your center fat, quick enough to, reach the shade? Whatever. So they piggyback what you're saying is it looked like last year it was a great fit because they just did what made them comfortable. Yeah. Period. That's just great coaching. Great coaching is I know whatever we can run, my offense can mold into whatever. If these jumbo tight ends show up and our quarterback's not that dynamic, hey, we're going to run what the Niners run and beat the shit out of people. Yeah. If the kid at LSU shows up, who's a great athlete, who is like an Anthony Richardson type, like boomer bust, who can do the read option RPO stuff, run that because it's so easy in college football to do now. Yeah. I don't know how you don't do it. That'd be my take.
100%. That offense has one of the best comeback stories in college football. What they did, what Mike Denbrock did. When you watch, I dove into his Jaden Daniels film more than others just because I know him and I was with him at ASU. Is they really did the same six schemes and plays on offense. They just reformationed them and. But they weren't that complex. They were pretty simple. And I always go back to I heard Graham Harrell say this one time, who was the OC at West Virginia. I was calling one of their games, and in the meeting with him, he said this great phrase about offenses, and he said, "My offense is simple with the illusion of complexity." Yeah. And it's such a true statement of what an offense should be. It's really, if you break it down, pretty simple. We run inside zone, outside zone, stick, some curl concept, some seam concept, and some play action concepts. And we just do them at different formations and motions and shifts and things like that to make it look complex, but it's really simple. That's what LSU did at a really high level, is making that thing really simple for Jaden Daniels. So props to LSU. I'm excited to see what they do.
That's a great point. And it's another great team to talk about in the mix there in the SEC, what that SEC West, really, what that's going to look like. No, it's a great discussion for folks listening of what offenses are is just moving people around week to week, and they're going to motion it week to week and shift it, make it look differently, put some new personnel out there. Oh, there's a running back out there. There was a receiver out there the week before. Are they in man or zone coverage? Because that's the only way you can teach football, especially now with just everybody's like a popcorn microwave society. This coach is gone. That coach is gone. If you can keep a mainstay for a couple of years, coach the general population of what the offense is going to look like, I think that's the only way you really can grow.
Yeah.
But I digress. So I think we got to talk about Penn State, man. It's right in your wheelhouse. You interviewed Coach Franklin, was awesome. Follow what Adam does, guys. He goes in depth with so many different people. We're going to get into that in a second. But if you want in-depth interviews with just some cool people around college football and just sports in general, Adam's doing it. It's really high quality product, and it sets the standard in the media world of what to do. Especially with a media company and a podcast, we watch your stuff all the time. All right, so what's up with Penn State football this year? I was talking to Pat Kraft not too long ago, an old buddy. He's a Temple Owl through and through. Don't anybody fool you. But he was just telling me the number of season tickets they have is outrageous, and the support is outrageous. And I'm a Pennsylvania guy. I get it. But talk to me about the bigger picture here, where Penn State football is at right now in the college football world, and then how do you think the season's going to go for them?
Yeah, we could talk about this for 3 hours, but Pat Kraft is a beast, man. He has completely changed the trajectory of that athletic department. I mean, I talked to Coach Franklin about it on camera and off camera, and he talks on camera. Coach Franklin does about the difference since Pat Kraft got hired, and how he talks about how he used to get no's all the time before, and since Pat Kraft's been there, it's yes, how I'll make it happen, and how quickly Pat Kraft makes it happen. And I think that's what you need, right? You need an AD. We talked about alignment earlier. You need an AD who's aligned with his head coach to really build a successful program. So yeah, Pat Kraft's a beast. I'm trying to get him on the pod too, so we'll see if we can make it happen. But Penn State football, I mean, it's an exciting time. I had Drew Aller, who's going to be their starting quarterback, and Coach Franklin on. I said to both of them, being around the program, and I was at a golf outing at Penn State maybe a month ago. It was like Coaches versus Cancer Penn State basketball golf outing. I'm telling you, man, the amount of people that came up asking me, like, saying national championship or bust, Drew Aller may win the Heisman, like, how good are we going to be? The amount of excitement around that program right now is unlike anything I've seen since I've been a Penn State fan. The expectation, the excitement to see Drew Aller, it's almost like the 10 years of Coach Franklin being there, and all the ups and downs, and the sanctions, to the Big Ten championship, to the terrible COVID season, to the Rose Bowl victory, has gotten them to this point right now where it's like make or break. We got to have the best season Penn State's had in a long time, and the excitement is there. There's a lot of pressure, and when you think about it, the pressure on a quarterback who has not yet started a game in college football, who's 19 years old, and Drew Aller, the expectation reminds me a lot of when Christian Hackenberg was getting there. It was, and he lived up to it, especially in year one. But there's so much expectation. But I got to know Drew really well. Drew Aller, he's as dialed in and as competitive and as good of a leader as I think you can want. So I'm excited to see Penn State for a lot of reasons on offense. One, the running back room. You got Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, one of the best running back rooms in the country. The problem at Penn State for so long, and this, you're a Pennsylvania guy, has been the offensive line. I mean, that's when Temple beat Penn State in 2014, I think it was. That was the issue. When Penn State loses 15. To Ohio State and Michigan, that's the issue. What's that?
15,
yeah. When Penn State loses to Ohio State and Michigan, that's the issue, right? It's the offensive line. They're not able to keep up.
Which is crazy because some of the best in the country are right in your backyard. That was my biggest pet peeve. I go back to our recruiting. Don't let guys leave Pennsylvania. I was like the 5th tight end offered.
Yeah.
Whether you think I'm number 1 or number 5, offer me first.
Yeah.
Like, just offer me first. Like, when I heard like 4 other guys get offered before me from like Florida and Texas, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, we're just playing in the Eastern Conference Final 1 hour away in Hershey, PA. Like, and not even for me. Like, I don't mean like offer me. I'm just saying, like, if you're off, like, every good player in Pennsylvania, offer them.
Yeah.
Like, if they're getting recruited nationwide, they should. If you think they're going to be a national recruit, offer them.
Yeah, like, Coach Franklin's done a good job of changing that with the whole dominate the state mantra. But before, I mean, it was the same thing with me when I was getting recruited by Joe Potts' staff. It was, it was tough. I mean, it took a while to offer me too, but it almost was like they were more conservative with the offers they were giving in-state kids because they didn't want them to they didn't want it to go south with the recruitment. But I'm like, it ends up hurting you because the in-state kids are waiting on offers. It's the same theory we had. And we're off the rails here from the offensive line conversation. We'll get back to it, but the in-state thing, it's the same mantra and the motto and the mindset that we had when I was at Arizona State that I didn't always agree with was, and in-state schools deal with it a lot. The thought is that if you offer an in-state local kid, you better be really sure that you want to take them if you're going to offer. That's as we know in college football. I did a video on it that went viral like a week ago about what offers really mean in college football and how an offer doesn't actually mean anything in college football. It just means we're interested. And then they got a board. The problem is with the in-state guys, like at ASU, they always were like, we're not offering an in-state kid unless we are sure that we want to take him. Because if we offer a kid in Michigan and then we end up in a month, we see his film, we're like, we don't want him. We just stop recruiting him and it's over. If it's an in-state kid and we do that, we ruin all our relationships. The coaches hate us now. So that's really the reason I think that Penn State did that. They did it to me. They waited a while to offer me. Anyway, it's an interesting dynamic, another insight into recruiting world of how that works in-state versus out-of-state.
No doubt. It's a great point. And, I'm talking to some people in different circles and I, help some kids get recruited and get in contact with different coaches so they can get more eyeballs on them and get an honest assessment. And, someone saw your clip and someone I am close with. And, we always have these debates over different kids. And one of the kids we mentor is starting to get offers and they're really good. I think he's legit. He's one of the best young players I've ever seen. I'm not going to say anybody's names here just for whatever. You never know now with NCAA stuff. But I think it's a freak show. And he's just going to be a junior. He's young. And, the person who's a mentor of that kid is like, these scholarships, man, I saw Adam's video. Adam's right. They're going to disappear. I'm like, they disappear for certain kids. Yeah. Trust me. But if you're a freak show and you're that good, one of the top kids in the state, they don't disappear.
Yeah.
In my opinion. If you're like a kid who has all the local scholarships and you don't whatever it is, I'm trying to think of a good comparison, but the bottom line is this one kid in particular that I've been able to work with a little bit. He's not in that case. He has a lot of offers right now. So it's interesting to see though. I don't think it's really changed since you and I were there though. It's the same thing.
It's funny when I did that video and I wish I would have, it was a pretty quick clip of me on a podcast talking about offers. And again, it got tons and tons of views and people clearly were resonating with it. I wish I would have had time on it to articulate more what I really meant and how it really works. Because the video, the thesis of the video for anyone who hasn't seen it is I was saying how when I was at Arizona State, you're recruiting a tight end room, right? You're trying to sign, based on scholarships, you have one tight end scholarship to sign. You can sign one guy. What we would do, and this was our philosophy, it varies by school, was that you at that point go offer a lot of guys. So we have one spot. Our offer to scholarship was 1 to 7. So we would offer 7 guys for one spot. Now, a lot of things move. So there was a chance I could get 2 scholarships if a guy transferred. There was a chance that, there's a lot of moving parts. So schools have to offer more guys than they actually can take, or else they'll never fill their roster. So it's funny because I put that video out and the Clemson fans are like, well, Clemson offers are all committable. They're committable until they're not anymore, because at some point they will fill up their scholarship class and their offers. They're going to offer, even if Clemson at ASU we offered 400 kids, Clemson may offer 175. They're only signing 20 some. So at some point the offers all become non-committable because they fill up in their class. But like you said, if you're an elite player and you're the best of the best, offers really don't matter to you because every program is going to take you no matter what. You can call any of them and they'll take you. By the time signing day comes, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's in that elite class. I think he's in that next class below it, probably because where he's at and who he plays and his lack of experience. But he's that freaky and he's kind of positionless too. Adds a whole nother dynamic. Adam and I are playing one position in college football. Maybe you're moving inside the tackle. But that's what we played, right? You're a tight end. You and I were the type of guy that really weren't going anywhere else. So it's different with those positions too. No, it's a lot. And people hear 400 whoa. It's remember, it's Arizona State. It's not Alabama. And there's no disrespect to Arizona State. But if Alabama offer 400 kids, there's 400 kids making the phone call saying, I'm really, really interested.
And what people don't realize is like part of that 400, like you just said, again, we'll take the tight end room, for example. I can sign one tight end. I'm a young coach trying to shoot my shot. I go and offer the top 5 tight ends in the country, right? So there's 5 scholarships I just offered, but those guys are not coming to ASU, but I'm a coach who's aggressive and ambitious, and I'm going to try to recruit them, right?
I played the game. I was an All-American. Yeah. I didn't have a knee issue. I'm still in the league.
Exactly. So like at the end of the class, we might have offered 15 tight ends and signed one, and everyone's like, how'd they offer 15 tight? Well, 7 of the guys went to Bama, Auburn, Penn State, like we're not getting them, but I offered them just for fun. Anyway, but I'll go back real quick to the Penn State. The problem has been the offensive line. And what they did this year was get Olu Fashanu, their left tackle, who would have been a top 5, top 10 pick in this year's draft, to come back for another year. Another benefit of NIL that like was able to keep him in school another year, finish his degree. He's back. That offensive line room's as good as it's probably been the last decade at Penn State. So I'm excited to see how it all plays out.
What was the one thing George Franklin said to you where you were like, oh, I didn't expect you to say that? Because there's got to be something that kind of pulled you back a little bit in one of your questions.
Yeah, there are a few things. I think number one, I asked him about what surprised him the most when he got to Penn State. I said, you got this job, because I interviewed him it's close to 10 years since he got the job. And he said, which makes me feel old, by the way. He said, I got the job because I did not know what I was really walking into. He said, number one, I was so excited to get the Penn State job that I didn't know enough about the sanctions. He goes, I should have done more research on like what it really meant. He talked about how when he got the job, he spent so much time recruiting his recruiting class and not enough time spending time with the players on the team. He talked about this was a kind of multiple answers from him, but I asked him what surprised him at Penn State, and asked him, I said, if you could go back and give the James Franklin who's taking this Penn State job advice 10 years ago, what would you give him? And that was what he said. He said, spend more time with your team, because we had to go on the road and try to fill a class that was depleted because of the sanctions, and I didn't get to know the players. And he said, I wish I would have, talked to some more former Penn State players to understand more about this place and like how special Penn State is. And because he's a guy who didn't go to Penn State, didn't play there, grew up in Pennsylvania, but didn't know the place that well. He said, he's like, I wish I would have called Michael Mowdy. I wish I would have called, some of these guys and like gotten their perspective on the sanctions and understanding what it means in the locker room and understanding what they all went through before he got there. I thought it was cool. And it was really cool perspective to hear him talk about that. Stuff he really hasn't talked about before. So it was fun.
Was he one of your favorite interviews? Talk about some people that really, that moved the meter for you. And we love all our pod interviews. I've had awesome people on, but some of them you walk away and you're like, whew, man, that was friggin', man, my heart was pounding. Somebody who really moved the needle for you. Yeah,
I think Coach Franklin was great. Just because like I know him so well, and he's been a big part of my life since I played for him, and it was cool to like dive deep into parts of his life, on the podcast. That's the fun part for me, like things that people haven't really heard before. So he was awesome. I think Greg Schiano was one of my favorites, man. He was so good. It's funny. You think of Coach Schiano, you don't really think of a guy who would want to be on an hour-long podcast. And we sat there for an hour and a half. I mean, he was rolling with stories and insight, talked about getting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers job, and like just says like I was not ready to be an NFL head coach. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like just really cool insight that
was awesome. When he breaks, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Adam. When he says we break it down family, but then I cut you the next day, I stop breaking it down with family. I mean, that's so fact.
Right?
That was so real and so true about the NFL. It's so hard. It's like people say family, but then like say you're blocking for your brother and you like give up on the play because it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect your paycheck or whatever. That's not family. Like that's why to me, folks, and it's a shame. NIL is great and all. Don't get me wrong, but college football is the purest version of football, in my opinion, in high school. Because, and I cut you off, Adam. I apologize, but the top level is not football. It's football to watch with your eyes, but man, it's different. You could be a head coach and you don't even pick these players. You're not even interested in them. You got to tell them how great they are. You may not even like them. Yeah. And vice versa. You're a player. And you're perfect in this one scheme, but you're running a different scheme and it makes you look worse, devalues you, and then all of a sudden you're out, right? So it's really different. It's really
that's a great point. And what's funny, man? I hate this. You're not going to like this because it takes away from the purity of college football. I think that college football will see go to that model really, really quickly. I think the years of head coaches making personnel decisions every single day, every year in college football will come to an end relatively soon. That's a prediction I have in the whole scheme of where the game's at. We're seeing the professionalization of college football, the nationalization of like all over the country, Big Ten having USC and UCLA. It's becoming more and more like pro football. And at some point, there's too much on the head coaches to be able to actually be a functioning head coach. There's too much. So right now, they're approving scholarships. They're raising NIL money. I mean, when Penn State offers a guy, it goes to Coach Franklin right now. Like it offers a scholarship. They're offering hundreds of kids. They're dealing with NIL money. They're dealing with donors. They're dealing with the administration. They're dealing with like game planning and scheming and their staff and all the recruiting. Just the recruiting part of it that the NFL doesn't have. I think we'll see general managers in college running personnel departments. We already see right now, like there's general managers in college programs. That's kind of a new, because of the portal and all that NIL, that they have GMs who kind of run the transfer stuff. But at the end of the day, the head coach is still ultimately making all personnel decisions, where in the NFL, as you know, depending on where you're at, Patriots, Belichick does it, but like most places, a general manager and the owner per se make final personnel decisions. Who are we drafting? What are we doing? The head coach has major input, but it's the general manager's call at the end of the day. I think we'll see that at some point in college football shift to the general manager model, and the college football coach handles the other stuff, NIL, the players, dealing with them, recruiting, all that stuff. They get told almost who to recruit. And that's the model actually right now that they're implementing at Texas Tech. It's really interesting at Texas Tech. If you read, there's a lot of cool articles about it. I'm going to send it to you after this because you'll find it fascinating. The Athletic did a great story on the model at Texas Tech right now is that assistant coaches do not pick who they're recruiting. It's really interesting. In college programs all over the country, as a tight ends coach at ASU, I decide what tight ends I want to recruit. I'm responsible for dictating like who the best players are and evaluating them. At Texas Tech, their personnel staff and their director of player personnel makes the decision on who gets offered and who they recruit. And then the tight ends coach or the running backs coach or the receivers coach gets told, here's the receivers you're recruiting. And they don't really have a say in the evaluation. It's really an interesting model. It's another shift towards that towards that pro model.
And everyone may say, oh, wow, they may be bummed. I mean, listen, I'm sure some of them are a little bit, but allows them to do more football, spend more time with family.
They're probably happy. They're like, yeah, we don't want to evaluate because half my day as a coach is you're evaluating high school prospects. You're watching
guys that aren't on your team.
Yeah, not even evaluating them to like draft them. You're evaluating them to like offer them, and they may not even be interested in your school. Then you got to go recruit them.
You don't have much of a life. It'd be interesting to see. And it's a good point. And now quality life for coaches is we're off the track again, which is fabulous. We never would have got here. Is like that scares the hell out of me, and I bet it scares the hell out of you about the amount of time it takes and the sacrifice you have to make to get to where you want to go in coaching. And it's respect to the industry. But these guys have 3 weeks off a year, and they are 7 days a week the rest of the year, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a grind. And I'm down to work. You're down to work. We've done it. We've climbed the mountain. But that is serious. And college and pro football, all the coaches try to get into pro football because you don't have to recruit. You're your players, coach them. Yeah. You have a little bit more time off. You have your weekends to yourself. So it's interesting. You could see more of that model in college football. It's a great point by Adam. All right, as we wrap up, my last two questions. All right, UCLA, USC, they're in the Big Ten. Everyone gets settled in the Big 12, Big 14, whatever it is now, down in Texas, the South. And then the SEC will settle in here with Texas and Oklahoma, all within the next 2-3 years. All that will be done. Here's your ranking question. Rank those three conferences.
Yeah. This is post realignment?
This is post realignment. And you can rank all the conferences in college football. I'm just assuming they would be your top three.
Yeah. I'm going to go post realignment. I mean, obviously, I kind of play this as a bit a little bit on my stuff, but SEC number one. I kind of joke about Big Ten being the best conference in the game, but SEC number one, Big Ten number two. This is where it gets tricky now after it all plays out, right? I'm gonna go ACC, Big 12, Pac-12.
Wow. Now, why 3 over 4 there?
What's that?
Why ACC over Big 12?
I think Big 12 losing Oklahoma and Texas is going to just crush their brand. I don't think who they're bringing in is enough star power to replace those schools. I love UCF, as we talked about during the pod. I don't think it's there. And I think the ACC, although they've had some bad years and down years, and it's not a deep conference, you do have some powers in there. You got the Clemsons, you got the Florida States, who's playing really well and like one of the top programs in the country. I think the ACC is more built to last right now than where the Big 12 is going. And I do like what the Big 12 is doing. I just think I think for them, like, more quantity of teams is not always a better conference, right? And I think that they're going to struggle in the long run to be among the top conferences in college football. The Pac-12 is the one that really, I mean, it stinks because you talk about the Pac-12 going from last year was probably like one of the most surprising conferences to me. I was ripping on the Pac-12 in the preseason, and they probably had the deepest conference in college football last year. We talk about Utah, USC, you got Oregon State, you got Oregon. I mean, all these schools played really, really well. Washington played, like, all these programs played really, really well, and they were really deep. And now they're going to get absolutely depleted, and it's not done. I'll say this: I don't know what's going to happen, but for all the fans listening and everyone, like, we are far, far, far away from the end of conference realignment. Like, the conference rankings we just gave won't even make sense in another year because there'll be even more realignment.
Really, yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the ACC and the Pac-12, right? Like, or the Big 12 obviously has gone all in, and they're bringing people in now. And more people get poached out of the Big 12. You know, there's all the discussions of, like, does the NCAA disappear and all that? I don't think that happens.
Yeah,
but
and you got the Notre Dame conversation.
They're a whole nother piece.
Yeah.
I forget who I was talking to the other day. It's always funny, good bar talk. Like, when I go on vacation, I get to just sit at a bar and just bullshit with people. Yeah. And, you know, it's like Notre Dame, they need the Big 12. Notre Dame doesn't need anybody.
Yeah.
They don't need anybody. Okay. Whether you like Notre Dame or not, they don't. They are just as big as some of these conferences for sure. Now, it's an interesting point. I think my gut would say, yeah, Big 12 or ACC. But, you know, UNC is trending upwards. Florida State is, you know, they're top of college football. When they're their best, they're really good. Miami, when they're their best, they're really good. I think they're just down right now, or at least Miami is. See what happens. The Big 12, though, is like football country. It's going to be interesting to see.
I think
basketball, too.
If you ask me, like, right now, you know, I think, like, this year, maybe it's Big 12 over ACC, but, like, I think the ACC is built more to last with those historic programs. Now, do they lose those? Like, that's what I mean. Like, those rankings probably won't mean anything because I think there's a chance they lose some of those programs.
No doubt.
I'm not sure if the ACC is intact in 2-3 years, you know, if they have all those teams.
No question. Great points. All right, here as we wrap up, the great Adam Breneman joining the show. Friend, we're both top tight ends coming out of Pennsylvania. We're kind of rolling out together in this media thing. Okay. Ryan Day goes on. I think it was with Joe Cloud on Fox. He talked about what's the one thing you would change in college football on the field, which I thought was a great question because everyone's talking about everything off the field. But let's keep the football the main thing. I love how everyone was freaking out about NIL, and everyone's watching college football last year, and it's just like it was before. It was awesome, right? I love that. It's like, all right, now we're going to move on. So I digress. Coach Day said the one thing I would change, I'd bring the hash marks in more, and I'd make it more of the NFL. And I don't know, the casual fan may not even realize that like the hash marks play a lot into the game of football. You may understand the hash marks are wider, but how much they play into the role. Coach Day was pretty much saying that back in the day, you know, these linebackers, these players covering this wide side of the field, you know, there was no one dynamic enough really to get the edge. Now you spit the ball in one of these guys' hands and you're asking a DB to tackle Marvin Harrison Jr. in space on a bubble route. I don't care who you are. You could do it on an NFL field. He'd go score. So, do you agree with them? Is that the one thing you change maybe or on the field? And what were your thoughts on the overall take?
I agree with you. Great question and really interesting answer by Ryan Day because it's something that no one really talks about. You know, it kind of just is what it is and everyone deals with it. I think the average fan doesn't realize in the college game how much of a part of the game the hash marks are. I mean, your play calls are dictated by hash mark. You have calls that you can only make on one hash mark. You know, we have everywhere I've been, you have literally just only left hash plays because you got to be in a certain set. You want your quarterback going one way. In the NFL, again, I didn't play in the NFL, but I know decent amount about it. I know hash marks play a role. It's not as big of a role as it is in college because of the difference in hash marks. You got your ability to go what's called formation into the boundary, which is I'm not explaining to you, I'm explaining to your listeners. Formation into the boundary, which is when your strength of your formation or the majority of players are into the short side of the field. your ability to do that in the NFL, it's not a huge difference because of the closest of the hash marks. When they're as wide as they are in college, it makes a huge difference. It also can be an advantage for the offense when you get, you can run formation in the boundary and put all your guys into a really short part of the field. It's outdated. Ryan Day makes a great point. I think it definitely should change, and at least you look at, and I think Ryan Day made this point. You look at the NBA and college basketball; they moved the 3-point line back as shooters got better, right? They moved that back. It's time that college football at least moves the hash marks closer, if not to the entire to where the NFL ones are.
It's definitely a conversation that's come up in football before. You've had it in your tight end room. You've had it casually with people, right? But then when Brian says it, he's so polarizing and a great football coach, a great man. He recruited me to BC. I'm sure he recruited you too somewhere. And I was like, wow, that's great. And he brought it to the forefront. I wouldn't be shocked if that changes here in the next couple of years.
Well, when Ryan Day says it, it's probably got a decent chance it's going to happen.
More than you and I, no way.
Yeah.
Adam Breneman, dude, good luck this year. You're busy as hell. You're working your ass off. You're 50 minutes, man. I can't thank you enough. That's plenty.
Thanks, man.
Good luck, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Thanks, man. See ya.